Welcome to this special hangout on Budget 2014. Taxsutra's roadblock coverage on Union Budget 2014 continues, and we bring you this special edition focusing on the indirect tax changes that the Finance Minister proposed earlier today while introducing the finance bill in the Parliament. It's indeed interesting that the Finance Minister spent almost 2 hours discussing on his speech before the Parliament, and a large part of that speech actually dealt with various tax provisions, both on the direct tax as well as on the indirect tax. Indirect tax, to be specific, he spent quite a lot of time. There have been mixed reactions. Specifically, to discuss the indirect tax related changes, we have Mr. Lakshmikumaran, who's a founding partner of Lakshmikumaran and Sridharan. Thank you, Mr. Lakshmikumaran, for joining us on this special hangout today evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Lakshmikumaran, let me first begin with the most talked about and most eagerly awaited change relating to the introduction of goods and services tax. And here he made yet again a sort of positive statement stating that I assure all states that the government will be more than fair in dealing with them. And the GST, they have reintroduced their firm commitment to introduce the GST and bring the GST. No specific time frame, which of course is difficult, but looking at the specifics of implementation of GST, what are you sort of happy with what he stated in the finance during his speech today?
I don't think he can do anything better than what he has done, because there are several imponderables, including the amendment to the constitution, and thereafter taking many states also on board, and the issue relating to the compensation or loss of revenue, etc., is still hanging on. So, considering these factors, and also the ultimately want the mean rate to be finalized, that has not been finalized, and most important thing is the IT infrastructure to make it implementable is also not in place. So all these things have to go hand in hand before we start implementing. Otherwise, that can be a nightmare. So I think his wish list of bringing it early or as early as possible is well taken, and obviously he cannot give the time frame at this point of time, and though he would like to. So this is the under various constraints, whatever he has said, that I think the best statement he can make.
Sure. And one connected point to this, do you believe that the other changes that he announced today, be it in excise, service tax, are in any way a step forward in the direction of introduction of GST, or you think that one more opportunity was missed by the government to align all these laws and bring them closer?
I think it's a very interesting question. I would say there are some steps taken in this budget which are retrograde, which are not in the right direction towards GST. I'll give one or two examples. As far as the input credit is concerned, if duty is paid on the inputs and I receive it, as of now, we can take the credit at any time because we're entitled to take the credit. Now he is putting a time limit that within 6 months you may take the credit. This was the provision early in 1995, and later on it was found that itself was a retrograde step. It was deleted, and now in 2014, 1 year before the GST, we reintroduced and caused the whole confusion, because sometimes it can happen that I am a manufacturer, I am manufacturing and selling the goods, and I think the goods are exempt. I thought so. Later on the courts hold, no, it is not exempt, it was paid. That I have all the duty paying documents which I can take the credit. I can come back to the government and then say, hey, I have 2 crores credit available, therefore I'll pay the remaining. The courts used to give. Now you cannot. So these types of amendments that have been made, or I would say retrograde, it is not the correct way forward as far as the GST is concerned.
Right. Coming specifically to the service tax changes, I must say that when I went to the memorandum and then the finance bill, there have been several changes on the service tax, especially around the negative list. This particular point also found a place in finance minister's speech as well. Any one or two key changes which you think will have a significant impact on the point of law or on the businesses at large that he has introduced? For example, he's brought in service tax on radio cab, etc. Uh, he has also tweaked the provisions relating to the place of provision of services rules. Senvat credit related changes have been announced. So negative list and these other rules related changes. Any one or two points which, according to you, are absolute critical?
See, basic thing is when he is pruning the negative list, he brought in the levy on sale of space or time for advertisement in electronic media.
Right.
There is always a contention whether this is state subject or a central subject. In fact, in the last year when the negative was introduced, they specifically excluded this particular category because in the explanatory memorandum also it was said that it could be a state subject and therefore we don't want to get into that.
Right.
But now, blatantly now introduce it. And in between there is no specific judgment of a court or something to say it is central subject or something. So therefore actually it is a gamble that they want to take it and then charge service tax on this.
Perhaps they took a inspiration from the current international debate that is going on in the context of digital economy, which is sought to be addressed under BEPS project.
No, those things are fine, but in the Indian context, you are now questioning the power to levy. That's the question.
Right.
Similarly, the exemption of certain input services to education institutions that have been pruned and had been given now only specific services are exempt.
Right.
It will open up a new Pandora's box. Suppose education institution is requiring me to come and give a talk. And what about service tax payable on this? Is it input service or not? Is it exempt or not? Actually teaching, by restricting the exemption to the specific input services for education institutions, as again the existing one which is umbrella notification, we are actually increasing more problem and more disputes.
Right. There's one more point which finds a small mention is on the rationalization of the works contract tax portion and the service tax which is to be levied on the works contract tax. This year especially we saw two major judgments, first in the case of LNT and then the case of Otis elevators, wherein again the works contract tax and the service tax VAT portion being debated. Your quick comments, sir, on the rationalization that he is proposing on the service tax on the works contract tax portion?
In respect of original work, the service tax is payable on 40% of the total contract value.
Right.
With regard to non-original works, earlier we had 60%, 70%. Now you made 70% on. So that does not get into any controversy with regard to the OTs or otherwise, etc. Here, works contract is there, and there is service portion. Service portion by a thumb rule, he wants to say 40% for original work, non-original work 70%. Period. That's all.
Right. On the point of taxation rules, there seems to be a specific clarification on the date of export vis-a-vis the date of the invoice. Again, there have been several rulings during this year and a litigation to decide what is that point of taxation, especially in respect of export services. Do you think that the proposal is fair and will be acceptable to the industry?
I think it is a fair proposal.
Right. Right. Very briefly, touching on the SEZ related announcement, most of the other changes are procedural in nature, but specifically in the context of special economic zones, he has introduced a clarification about the about the recipient of the service and the consumption of the service within SEZ. We had some clarifications coming through during the year, but do you think again this proposal is useful, or something more should have been done as far as the SEZ are concerned?
Under the circumstances, useful.
Okay, okay. Sir, moving on before we look at the specific other changes leading to the excise and customs, etc. One major change that I noted is the mandatory pre-deposit that has been introduced in respect of appeals before Commissioner appeals, and a higher amount in respect of income tax, the tribunal level. So this pre-deposit seems to be mandatory. First of all, your comment on the constitutional validity of such mandatory pre-deposit, and B, whether this again is a step which is setting a wrong precedent.
Well, let us put it this way. Statistically, it has been found that the show cause notices issued by the department, whether it is customs or excise or service tax, about more than 80 to 85% of them are getting confirmed at the original authority stage. And at the tribunal stage, more than 80% of them are getting reversed. It is a proven statistics. He has collected the statistics. Now, it means in 80% of the cases where the commissioner decides the matter against him, that means the demands are not sustainable, but they still pass an order for various reasons, and we sympathize with them. But now, earlier we used to go to the tribunal and then point out a patent error. It is just not following the Supreme Court decision. It is just against the provisions of law, and we used to get unconditional stay. Now, in all those cases, in the first appeal, you have to deposit 7.5% of the duty and 7.5% of the penalty. I think it is a retrograde step. We are not moving in the right direction. If we are talking about rule of law, the rule of law must necessarily prevail. And if the order is patently illegal, asking the assessee to pay 7.5% or 10%, or in fact 17.5% in the second appeal, they actually, and by the time when you and they hear the deposit not only for the duty, also in the penalty. And secondly, one more thing you must remember: many times the show cause is issued not only to the company, but also company officials, managers, directors, CEOs, CFOs, and the commissioners pass an order confirming the penalties on them. Every person filing an appeal, they have to deposit 10% or 7.5% as the case may be. It is again harsh.
Right. And one more point connected to Mr. Lakshmikumaran is, would this apply in respect of even the existing pending appeals which are before various fora, or will it be in respect of the new appeals that will be filed after this law, after this budget comes into effect?
It will be only after. That is, any appeal filed after the enactment of the law will come. The old appeal will continue to the old one.
Right, right. Another point which is common and that has been made in the context of excise, but also has a relevance in the context of service tax, is the dispute relating to the determination of rate of tax. An appeal against the tribunal order will now lie before the Supreme Court. We had a Delhi High Court judgment during this year, taking a similar view. Your quick comments, sir, on this particular specific
clarification? From the beginning, from 1982 onwards, under 35L or under the customs law, any dispute relating to determination rate of duty or the valuation has to be done with Supreme Court. In between, there was a question raised: is the product excisable or not, taxable or not? Will that amount to determine rate of duty or not? It is long back it was settled, but this again raised ugly head. So this amendment puts all the controversies to a stop. Now they say even determination of rate of duty or excisability will also come under the category of determinate rate of duty. And therefore, appeal will lie to the Supreme Court only. It is a good step.
Right, right. Talking about Supreme Court ruling, Fiat, which has been the most talked about judgment in last few years on indirect access. Post Shom Committee recommendations, we also saw some clarification coming from CBEC. But now, in the rules that have been released today, there seems to be a welcome announcement that has been made by the finance minister. It'd be great if you could take us through this change and also its likely impact on the industry.
Yeah, sure, sure. See, the judgment in the case of Fiat, the Supreme Court held that if the goods are being sold by a manufacturer below the cost, and especially to meet the benchmarking the price of competitors, the court held it is additional consideration, and accordingly duty has to be paid actual manufacturing cost plus manufacturing profit.
Right.
This actually went against the long-standing interpretation that transaction value at the factory gate is the relevant for the purpose of paying as excise duty, whether that particular transaction value is below the cost or above the cost is not material, provided all conditions being satisfied. So this particular judgment actually reversed the whole meaning or understanding of the entire trade. But after this particular judgment, the department woke up and then started issuing show cause notices, issuing summons, and making as if all the assets have been stolen or they have actually defrauded the government and all those things. Now, there was a clarification, welcome clarification from the board earlier saying that, look, it is matter of interpretation, it's not a question of any suppression, etc. Now the law gets amended by way of introducing Rule 6, whereby an amendment has been made, saying that even if the goods are sold below the cost and the profit they have added, that's where the problem comes in. Then, even if it is below that, that price will be taken as the basis. Now, the judgment talked about sale below the cost. The amendment talks about sale below the cost plus profit. Now, it makes a big difference. What profit? Normal profit, 10% profit, 15% profit. That means cost will be added, profit will be added. Only when that is going to be below the cost, it will be charged. What will be the consequences? That is a gray area. I wish they had simply said that is below the cost. But for that, amendment is welcome. But they made only prospective, it's not retrospective, and therefore the cost of this issue till now will continue to be adjudicated, confirm, 7.5% deposit, penalty, 10% further, all this will count.
Right, right. I think, that is an absolute critical detail that the businesses need to watch out for. Out of the customs or excise related changes, which is the change that disappointed you the most, sir? Specifically talking about customs and excise, out of various provisions that have come into effect or that have been proposed.
You want most disappointing?
Yes, yes.
I would say disappointing amendment is that relating to the compulsory pre-deposit of the duties and penalties before filing an appeal.
Right.
That is the most disappointing one.
Right, right. So Finance Minister in his speech vehemently stated government's intention that they do not propose to introduce any retrospective change. I just noted one instance in the entire finance bill of 2014, which is in the changes under excise, and that change is in Rule 8 of the Pan Masala Packaging Machine Rules 2008. Of course, it has a very limited impact in terms of the businesses that are affected, and they have been introducing. They are proposing to introduce a change with retrospective effect from 13th April 2010 to align these changes. Do you think that's this amendment is something which will cause a burden on this particular industry?
It will.
Right. I think, as I said, this is the only change that I noticed, which is from a retrospective effect, and is contrary to what he stated in his speech.
You may be right, but I don't want to I don't want to confirm you are right or wrong because I am still going through the papers because we got it downloaded only around 4 o'clock. So
Fine, fine.
I just have about 2 hours to go through the papers. So
No,
therefore,
no.
it can be right. I mean, you are very fast person, so you have gone through it very fast. I am a slow man. So
In fact,
maybe
there have been quite a few. Sorry, please go ahead.
yeah. So I will confirm your statement, say tomorrow.
Okay, okay. In fact, there have been quite a few retrospective exemptions that have been added both in customs as well as in excise and in service tax as well. One particular point which will have a impact on the M&A and the restructuring transactions, and this has been introduced in the service tax and in line with the excise, is basically in section 87 of the Finance Act 94, the power to recover dues of a predecessor from the assets of the successor purchased from the predecessor is to be provided. This is currently available in section 11 of the Central Excise Act. Do you think this proposal sort of fixes the loophole which is there, or is again something which will impact the M&A?
No, actually, there was a vagueness in a situation like this, etc. Section 11 is talking about recovery of dues. Once the tax demands have been confirmed from whom it has to be recovered, this amendment clarifies from whom it can be recovered.
Right. Okay. Okay. In customs as well as in fact, on customs, excise as well as in service tax, there is a provision relating to filing of some kind of information return, which is sought to be introduced. When I looked at the memorandum and finance bill, I did not comprehend the details. If you could shed some light on what is the purpose of this information reporting in addition to the existing returns that are being filed? Is it adding to the compliance burden?
No, no, actually it is different. See, the government is trying to introduce and appoint a new authority, a super cop. This authority can, and in fact, he shall get information from various government agencies like electricity department or our banks or VAT authorities, to whom various assessees are giving various returns and giving the various information. All these statutory authorities and banks, etc., they are supposed to share the information with the new authority.
Right.
And if they don't, then they can impose penalty by this new authority. The
Right.
new authority can impose penalty on the statutory authorities like VAT authorities if they do not cooperate and give the information asked for from them. This, according to the memorandum, it seems that is basically to get various information about an assessee, whether he is giving the same story everywhere, to the income tax or the customs, the excise, VAT, bank, etc., or to the other authorities. For example, bank, he says, my stock is so much, etc., it's a cock and bull story, and thereafter, so the excise, they say, no, I have not produced so much. So this is basically to collect and collate various information, and from there they can find out whether the assessee has disclosed correctly this taxable income or the taxable services, turnover, etc.
Right. Sir, any specific provision which you would have definitely liked to see in this budget and which hasn't happened and which sort of disappoints you?
No, see, one of the important thing which I would have thought is to simplify the SENVAT provisions as a prelude to go to GST. And several opportunities existed for the government to simplify it, make it user friendly, and move on. But that opportunity is lost. That's the only sad thing.
Right. And sir, if you were to rate this budget on a scale of 1 to 10, specifically the indirect tax provision first, how would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10?
So I am very bad in such type of ratings. But now that you are asking me, I can only give a thumb rule of say about 6 out of 0 to 10.
And overall budget, sir?
Overall?
Overall budget, would you rate it? How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10?
Around say around 6 or 7. That's all, not more than that.
Right, sir. Right. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and perspective. I'm sure we'll hear from you and your team in coming days on further insight and analysis. Thank you so much for your time and really appreciate your comments, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.